welcome back to another episode of the Dear Higher Self podcast. I am so excited to have our first ever guest on with us. We have Casey Riley. She's a somatic breathwork practitioner, and I'm so excited for you to hear all about what she does and how we met because it's a really fun story. But before we get into it, I'll let you introduce yourself, Casey, and tell us a little bit about your world and being a breathwork practitioner.
Yes. Well, first off, thank you for having me. I feel like this is such a full circle moment that you and I have touched on multiple times. So having this conversation, this sit down, I'm just thrilled just to reconnect with you in this way. But as you mentioned, yes, I am a somatic breathwork practitioner here in Phoenix. I have been facilitating this really powerful practice for just about 3 years now after I felt wholeheartedly how much it had impacted and shifted my life. And now I am just on a mission to offer this to as many people as possible, because if they can just get an ounce of the gifts and the freedom that I have felt from this, then that is more than enough.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Obviously know breathwork because I came to your breathwork class and that's how we connected initially. But I could definitely speak for how powerful breathwork is on your personal journey and your inward journey and just unlocking that inward journey and where it can take you and just tapping into to finding your path and living in alignment. It's a fabulous tool, which is why I'm so excited to have you on this podcast for that, and because of how we met, which is really cool. So the backstory for everyone of how Casey and I met. So a few years ago, I saw her on Instagram and was like, oh, I want to go to her breathwork event. I had just gotten introduced to what it was. It blew my mind. And so I really wanted to do a more official, actual class with it. So I saw Casey's and I went. And when I went to that breathwork class, that's where I met Lauren. So for those of you who are this is your first episode listening, Lauren and I started the Dear Higher Self podcast together, and we met at Casey's breathwork event, which was really cool. And so obviously, Lauren has stepped away from the podcast and it'll be just me running it now, but I still think it's such a cool unraveling of a story because I always knew I wanted to have a podcast. And so it all kind of came to fruition the way that, I followed the intuitive nudge to go to Casey's class, and then one thing led to another. I met Lauren as my friend. I met Casey. We connected. Now I have a podcast. The following of intuitive nudges has just blossomed so much from this one event. And I think that it is just so cool how the synchronicities of what came out of just feeling the nudge of wanting to go to a class, what that blossomed into. And it's wild how intuition can work like that.
Yeah. And I always say this, it is so much more than the breathwork session. It is so much more than what you're signing up for. It's all of these other elements. It's the people who you meet. It is perhaps you have social anxiety, and even just going into a space alone, maybe that's the transformation you're meant to feel. It might not even be the breathwork session. It could be the person you meet, stepping out of your car. Another big one is paying for something like that, something that's more of a luxury or not necessarily a necessity. A mom leaving her children for a couple of hours and having that time to herself. There are so many layers, and I think that you are a perfect example of just that. Of course, the breathwork was amazing, but look what has unfolded from that.
I got so much more out of it than just the breathwork, which was great in and of itself. So it's wild how that could happen. And now because of how that unfolded, when I hold my events, my intuition moon circles, I always preface it with you might be here because you think you want to learn about intuition or whatever drew you here today, but you have no idea why you're here. Something I say, something somebody else shares, a connection you make, you have no idea which ways you're going to be expanded. And that's what's so cool about putting yourself out there and going to different events like breathwork or whatever, because there's just, you never know what synchronicity is going to pop up because of it. And there's even more that unfolded from this. So the story doesn't just stop there. So when this was a couple years ago when I went to Casey's breathwork class, and this was when Uncommon Babe, which is my company. So Uncommon Babe is my company. Dear Higher Self is my podcast. But I was really just getting started with all of this. I was really just dipping my toe into getting it going. And I didn't have a large community of people that I knew that did all this kind of stuff, that were into these things. I was really calling it in, but I was kind of introverted at the time. And so just being there in that room by myself and going to an event by myself was kind of stretchy enough. And Lauren sat next to me, and she was a little bit more outgoing than I was, and we connected and got to talking, and then she asked me to go to coffee, and it blew my mind. I sat in the parking lot after the breathwork event, was like, oh my gosh, I just got asked to coffee. Is this how we make friends as an adult? Like, oh my, like my mind was blown that it could be that easy. That I was like, I would have never had the guts to like ask some random girl at like a yoga class or a breath class or wherever I was to be like, hey, do you want to be friends? Do you want to go get coffee? Like that was just like the stretchiest thing in the world to me. And so being the kind of person that I am that wanted to push myself and grow and break out of my comfort zone, I was like, okay, well, if she could ask me to coffee and this is how it works, then I feel inspired. I'm going to ask someone else to coffee. Like, who could I ask to coffee to help like expand my circle? Like, this is how you make friends. And then I messaged Casey and said, Casey, do you want to go to coffee with me? Like, I'm trying to meet new people and whatever. And then we ended up getting coffee together. So it was a gift that kept on giving.
Yeah, and really, to be honest, like I was kind of at a similar point in my journey where you were, which was really making new aligned friendships and meeting people in our 30s, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
It feels different because you have your high school friends, which are great, but you're changing and you want to connect with new people who are a little bit more aligned in this current stage of your life. And so when you invited me out, I was like, oh, okay, this is how it works. And then we had a wonderful matcha date together. And for me, that really opened up my capacity to connect more in that space. So by you planting that seed, I was now given permission to invite other women out to dates to see, like
Yeah.
get to know them and see where the friendship could go. And so thank you for planting that seed in my life.
I'm just so glad you said yes because it was the first time I had ever done that. And I remember like being really nervous about sending this text because I was like, if she says no, I don't know if I will ever have the guts to do this again. So I really hope that she just says yes and gives me the benefit of the doubt so it doesn't like just like totally shut me down.
Totally. And that's so funny because that could be the reality for some people, especially on social media when you get left on red and like
Yeah.
people don't respond, or even if it's not intentional, like maybe someone saw it, but they're just not in a space to
Right.
respond. But
Right.
it can be so like traumatizing if it doesn't
100%.
unfold the way that it's meant to. But I'm happy that it did unfold the way that it did.
Well, not I'm glad you said yes, and I'm glad that it ended up like being an inspirational thing for you too. Because I learned so much from Lauren in that moment. I didn't think it could be that easy. And once I ripped that band-aid and did it once, it's become something that is I don't even think twice about it. Like when I meet
Yeah.
someone and they're into the same things I am and I feel, an aligned kind of friendship that could be there, I'm like, "Oh, let's go to like it seems like it's no big deal." Whereas before, forget it. It felt like you were asking me to climb Mount Everest. It was so scary.
Yeah. I love that.
But that's how you expand and it's so cool. So
Mhm.
cool. Well, I'm glad that you said yes, and it only made sense now to have you be the first guest on the podcast because of, it wouldn't be here without you following your intuition to be a breathwork practitioner and hold the class. So it's like you probably didn't even know when you like how inspirational you were going to be outside of being a breathwork practitioner because they look at just as like a byproduct of you doing what
Yeah.
you do that it's led to new friendships, a podcast and all the things. So that's really cool.
And that's just one connection that was made. I'm sure so many other people are out there who have a new best friend or have met someone who has enhanced their life either professionally or personally. I mean, it happens all the time. And this is just one that I know of. And so it's really fun to see.
So cool. Well, I want to talk about breathwork because I know how much it's like blew how much it blew my mind when I first discovered what it was. When I First, I went to a day retreat, and one of the speakers that was at the day retreat did like a quick little like breath work thing. And I assumed when she said we were going to do breath work that it was just going to be like this cute little like guided meditation with like just some like deep breathing. And it absolutely broke my mind open and blew my mind. It was like the first time I got Reiki. I was like, what is this magical, mystical thing that you just unlocked in my brain? This is wild. So I only got a taste of it. So when I saw your Instagram come across, I was like, okay, I want to go do an actual class and really experience this for what it is, because it is mind blowing. So tell us about breathwork, please.
Oh man, where do I begin? Breath work, specifically somatic breath work, it really is a journey inward to release the built up tension, stress, and emotions that weigh us down in our daily lives. So many, I have chills right now, even when I say that, because so many of us are operating from old, outdated programs. And those programs are installed by trauma, whether it be big T or little t trauma, by these things that happen in our lives that we don't fully understand or process. And when we don't process an event or an emotion, our body responds by reacting, by getting triggered, by reacting, and having these like really these emotional responses, which is why you get heated and hot when you get like a text message from someone. You're like, oh my gosh, I could literally scream right now.
Yeah.
And what breath work allows us to do is quite literally when you're like, oh, I want to scream right now, you scream, you feel, you process these traumas and these triggers and these emotions that literally are subconsciously or consciously weighing you down, and you express it in a safe container where everyone is expressing and emoting and releasing. And you no longer have those triggers and traumas trapped in your body. You quite literally physically release them, which is why people feel so much lighter when they leave, or their mind is completely blown because they don't even realize that this stuff still affected them. They're like, what are you talking about? I thought I was over that. I don't even remember that.
Yeah.
Well, your body remembers. Your body is like a memory card, and it holds on to every single thing that has happened, good and bad, in your life. And by utilizing these conscious breathing techniques, you're able to unlock that and feel it more deeply, to let it in and let it move through you.
I love that so much. It's reminding me of how like when a deer is out in the woods and it experiences trauma or whatever, it runs away, and then when it gets to like its safe place, it like shakes and gyrates to like finish that the experience of the tremors going through it, and expels it out of the body. But we as humans, we don't have that luxury to just like sit and have the
Yeah.
shakes to let it finish
Yes.
its process and see it all the way through. So then it gets stuck
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't finish its cycle. So then that's when we see it in our day-to-day life coming out, and with different relationships or situations, when you're stuck in traffic, whatever little or big thing that comes up, you're like, why am I reacting so irrationally to this situation right now?
Yes. No, and you said that perfectly. I love that you brought that example up. And even the language that you used is spot on. So it's not even just animals out in the wild. It's my dog sitting here right now. When he falls off the couch, he shakes his body. And
Mm-hmm.
that is his innate response to complete a trauma cycle. Just like you said, they must discharge that
Yes.
trauma, even if it's this little, oh, I bumped my head on the couch or whatever. They shake it off, and that shake and that tremor signals to the body, we are safe now. The threat is gone. Literally shake that shit off.
And
And
reset.
now we can return. Here we
Yeah.
are. But you're right. People do not have those stopping points because we're at work or we're at dinner or we're at the
Mm-hmm.
restaurant, and we don't have that time to complete that discharge cycle. And therefore, it gets stuck. And so
Yeah.
what we're doing in these sessions are we are activating that same stress response that happened in all of those little and big moments in our life, and our body is shaking, it's completing that cycle fully. We're not stopping it, we're fully completing
Mhm.
it, and therefore it's reset. No big deal. We can now walk out of here completely fine, like our dog and the deer.
Yes. I love it because for me now, I've done breath work a few times, and sometimes what comes up, I'm like, ah, yes, that makes sense. That is resonating with what's going on right now. I can see why that would come up. But there's other times where I've done it to where I'm like, I don't know what is happening or what this is connected to, but
Yeah.
something is happening and I know it's good for me. I just don't know what it ties back to. And I think that it's
Yes.
really interesting. It almost reminds me of like the way you do like plant medicine, and you never know like what your journey is going to be like and what's going to come up. I feel like that breathwork works in the same way, where you're like, all right, I'm going inward to myself, and we don't quite know what's going to come up in this session, but I know whatever it is, it's what I need.
Yes, that's exactly it. Like I do these sessions myself too monthly. It's my form of therapy. So I show up with my mat and I sit there with a bunch of strangers and I go in every single month also. And I never know what's going to come up. And sometimes it's really gentle and it's no big deal. And then sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so intense and beautiful. And it makes me wonder, like, where was all of this stored? Like, there have been sessions where
Yeah.
I have been literally sobbing for 60 minutes straight. And to me, I'm like, where was I holding on to that? How was that affecting my behaviors and my patterns? Like,
Yeah.
that was so much energy that was just expelled from my being. Where was
How did
that
I keep
being?
a lid on that? Like, how was
Exactly.
I not aware?
How did I keep the lid on that? But here's the thing, little by little, that lid is bursting open and you start to be passive aggressive and it's bursting
Yeah.
open, then you get a little ticked off and it's bursting open, and that's before you have a nervous breakdown and the lid
Yep.
pops, you know? And
Yeah.
so let's pop the lid in the session so that you're not popping it on everyone else.
100%. I feel like it's funny what you were saying, that like sometimes it's gentle and sometimes it's intense, and I feel like for some people who might not have done it, they might be a little scared of like what's gonna come up. And for me, I'm the opposite. I'm like, let's go. Like I
Yeah.
whatever it is, like I'm gonna lean in fully. But I know for some people it's like, oh, I don't know, this is scary, I don't know if I want to go there. Like I remember, so my mom actually bought me the ticket to go to your class,
Yeah.
and I remember showing it to her because she was looking for like one last Christmas gift for me, and I was like, here, I want to go to this event, you can get this for me. And she was watching your video, and there's like people crying and like convulsing, and you're like holding their head, and she's like, why would you want to go to this? And I was like, why not, we've got to get it out. I'm like trying to like, you know, explain it to her why it's so healthy for you and so good for you, but I can see how people who aren't necessarily on this healing journey or who are just like getting their feet wet in it would be like, oh my gosh. So I'm curious what you would say for that, for those people who are like, oh God.
Well, it's really interesting because first off, I love that you brought up that your mom bought the ticket, because I was going to. I was like, I have the email right here where she asked, like, can I buy this for my daughter? I'm like, yes, you can.
I love it.
And the fact that she saw those videos. So there's typically the people who come to my sessions see the videos and they just know. They're like you. They're like, I don't know what this is. This looks
But it's
crazy,
calling me.
but
Yeah.
I need to go to it. And those people can either be super down or still a little nervous, of course. But usually when people see the video, it's like, that's for me, or absolutely not. This is an exorcism. This is weird. Um, but if someone's listening to this and they're kind of neutral and they're just hearing about it and it's like, well, why would I want to do something like this? This sounds awful, screaming and crying and all of these things. You know, what I would say to that person is, and we've kind of already explained this a little bit, but you are already behaving and acting in a way that these emotions are already expressing themselves in sneaky little ways,
Mm-hmm.
through passive aggression, through pushing down your intuitive hits, pushing down your dreams, pushing down your creativity. That was a big one for me when I was like in the corporate space, bottling everything up. And what happens when we push this down? It sucks our life force energy out of us, quite literally. And so to the person who's like, why would I want to do this? First off, not every session is a screaming
100%.
session. Okay.
Vouch
They
for
can
that.
actually be they can actually be very gentle and sweet. And the whole second half of somatic breath work is reconnecting back to your joy and your happiness and your gratitude. That's the whole second half. But most people focus on this like releasing half because it's interesting. But
Yeah.
you know, it's not always about this. Sometimes people come in because they need clarity. They need clarity on what steps they need. And quite honestly, when you clear your body from this like emotional residue, you become clear. And when you become clear, you can now be the conscious creator of your life and make conscious choices. Whether it's a yes or a no for you, at least you are consciously clear to make an informed decision on your life versus having everything dictated by these traumas and triggers, whether they're big T or little t. I really want to emphasize that just
Yeah.
because something horrible didn't happen to you does not mean we don't have these little things that add up and start to
Mhm.
affect our behaviors. And so that's what I would tell the person who's curious, but also a little scared is it might not be a screaming, crying blowout. It might not
Yeah.
be that. You might come in there and meet someone.
Yep. Can
You
vouch for
might
that
come
one
in there.
too.
You might come in there and meet someone. You might come in there and learn something new about yourself. You might just stretch yourself a little bit by taking this time for yourself. You will get something out of it. But it can be scary if it does go to a level where you really start to dive in, but your body will never, ever dish you up something you are not ready for. It's been protecting you your whole life. It's not going to give up on you now. I promise.
I love the way you wrapped that up with a bow. That's so important. Yeah, I feel like breath work is such a good tool for people who are kind of working through like shadow work and the unblocking piece, which is a huge part in, I mean, the whole purpose of this podcast is all about living in alignment, stepping into your power, becoming your true self. And in order to do that successfully, like you can get the clarity and kind of, for me, my go-to being a project manager in my corporate world in those days was like, what's the plan to get from A to B? You take this step, that step, and it's like that's so surface level. And while it's like it's important to like kind of know where you're going and have a plan and have there be structure, like there's so much inner work that has to happen for you to be able to step back into your power and to stay in alignment and to do that inward journey that's going to help you unlock and unblock what's been holding you back from doing that this whole time. And so breath work, I feel like, is such an important tool when you're on this journey to have in your tool belt to help you unblock and unlock what it is that's holding you back from those things that you're trying to manifest and that next version of yourself that you're trying to step into. Because I feel like breath work and EMDR therapy are both like the top two like fast trackers that will like help you expand and become the next level of who you're trying to become. Like those two are like the top two. If you want to go from 0 to 100, breath work and EMDR, like that's gonna do it.
Well, I think a real reason behind that is the embodied feeling that you get in these sessions. Because with mindset work, I love mindset work. Let me just put it out there. I love meditating, I love visualization, but it is harder to get an embodied feeling of change. Like you really got to work at it. You got to sit there and focus and like, okay, let me feel these elevated emotions. Whereas breath work, takes you there almost instantly. It'll take you into these actual felt sensations that you can never forget. They are so strong. And even going back to the second half, which is feeling joy, gratitude, connecting with love, when you feel an enhanced love for yourself or someone else at this level, I have chills right now at this level that it's very hard to access in your day-to-day life. One of two things happens. One, your body now remembers it's capable of experiencing that intensity of love, which
Mm-hmm.
is so beautiful. Now it can remember it outside of the room, off of the mat. And two, it allows you to quite literally repattern and rewire in this feeling in the moment. And so it's all
Yes.
about remembering and utilizing this. You can even utilize it strategically. Like when I'm in this elevated state in breath work, now let me visualize. Now let me manifest, because
Mm-hmm.
we know how much more powerful it is when you're in that felt state. And so when you have this embodied feeling, you can never forget that. It's just like when, like on your wedding day, it's a day you will never forget because the emotional charge is so strong, you will never forget it from your body. It's the same thing with breath work. When you experience those emotions, you can't forget it. And that is such a gift. And that's where it becomes life changing.
Yes. And to add to that, in addition to the remembering, when we're looking at like how quantum science works and manifestation and how like the energies work in order to be able to manifest and raise your vibration. When you're in those heightened states, like that's where the magic happens. That's when you're like remote control for life, to be like, I want my reality to be this way, or I want to show up as this person. Like that is when you are the most potent for being able to do that. And it's gonna, if you're having clarity gaps there, it's gonna help give you that clarity. So not only are you gonna have that clarity, but then you're gonna be right in that powerful state to like magnetize that towards you and align with what it is that's in most alignment for you that you're trying to manifest, which I think is just so cool.
And couple that with a group session where there's multiple people in the session, and we know that everyone's heart coherence expands 6 feet. So you're laying next to these people and their heart and their frequencies open, and
Mm-hmm.
now the whole room is charged. That's what makes the
Oh
group
yeah.
session super, super powerful, because those energies are intertwined and it's taking it up. It's like this battery being whoop,
Yeah.
supercharged.
Like a collective raising of the
Mhm.
vibration.
I love that. Exactly.
That's so cool. Yeah, I feel like it's just such a powerful tool. I feel like everyone should do it at least once to figure out what it is. I get, so I've gotten some really good downloads during a breathwork session. Like I knew I got my clarity for what my mission was with this business through a breathwork session. Just being in that state, it's like you're able to open your channel easier. It's kind of the same when you're in a deep meditative state. Like you're just in a different state where your brain waves are doing, just to keep in layman's terms, doing something a little different than it would in the day to day. And those things are able to drop in, those clarity pieces, those intuitive nudges, to where you're just boom, you have that aha moment or that great idea. I
Mhm.
love it. I'm a huge fan.
But I would even argue, like, you could sit here in silence and have a similar experience as long as you are not reaching for your phone and reaching for
Yeah.
food and distractions. Like, let's not underestimate the power of just sitting in silence. I have found that I've had emotional releases just sitting here, like intentionally, like 5 minute timer, sit, zip it, do nothing. And those downloads come in, emotions start moving through me. What we really need is to remove the distractions of our
Yeah.
lives.
Which is so hard in our day and age where there's
Yes.
just so much technology and noise available to us all the time. It's
Yes,
so hard.
exactly. Of course, the breath work and all these different events are amazing. I love them because they enhance it. But for anyone who might not be able to get themselves to one of these events just yet, don't underestimate the power of what you can utilize within your own being. That's why I love breath work, because you don't need to take anything. You know,
Yeah.
these plant medicine journeys, you're ingesting something and now you're under their control for 8 hours and they're taking you for a ride. And it can be very powerful. Trust me, I've done them too. But when you realize that the breath is something you always have with you, it is free, you can
Mhm.
access it at any time. You can really get this clarity and this download and everything you need just by yourself.
Yeah.
You are the healer. You are the healer, you know?
Yeah. For sure. For
Mhm.
me, I tell this story all the time. Like my number one easy go-to is just getting in the car and driving around, because your body kind of goes into a different mode where you're like on that autopilot. Sometimes you can go from A to B and you're like, I literally don't remember that entire drive
Right.
because you're just like in your daydream mind. And so for me, I'll just get in my car. So that's like my easiest go-to. Also
Yes.
because I can't be on my phone because like, I want to
Yeah.
live. So so that helps me. It
And you
just
want
like
others to
not
live.
pick up the, but yes, exactly. Yeah. But I found too that like I will try to just like go
Yeah.
and lay down and like meditate. I'm too tempted. So being in the car or in the shower is
Yes.
easier for me to connect because I can't have that impulse to grab my phone.
Absolutely, absolutely. And for the person who struggles with that, which we all do this day and age, that's why it's really like great that we have so many classes, mine, yours, other
Yeah.
people's, available to disconnect and to go inward, because we know if we leave it to ourselves, it can be really challenging.
100%. And I feel like I know for me, I love to learn all the different modalities and experience them all, but I know when I'm being led towards one versus another. You get the nudge. You'll see it come across your Instagram feed. And, I feel like it'll come across for a reason. Like, how did I not see yours until the time I saw yours? And, like
Yeah.
the universe works in mysterious ways like that. So the right one will call to you and you'll know which is like your day to day, your every once in a while, your once a year, like I still dabble with all of them. They all resonate, but I know when I need the one over the other.
Totally. Yeah. You really need to go scream it out versus like go and have a sister circle that's like full of like treats and delicious connecting and stuff.
Yeah. Well, like for me, like if it's not as simple as like driving around, that do that one when I need to clear my mind. But hot yoga is I do that weekly, and just moving my body and doing those poses and kind of having that flow. I get the best downloads when I'm in a yoga class. So like for me, breath work is um one that I'll do a little less. It's not something I'm going to do every week. That's kind
Yeah.
of like I don't know. Would you recommend doing it that much? Do people do it that much?
Well, I do a daily practice every day. So
Of
it's,
breath work, where you,
yeah,
like, straight go, "Okay, that's awesome, I love
it's
it."
11 minutes, it's nothing crazy, and it really
Mm.
is like my form of grounding and presencing and centering. It's not super intense, although it can move a lot of energy for sure.
Yeah.
But in terms of those longer sessions, I always like to say like once a month is great if you don't really have a lot of practices and things in place.
Mm,
Find something that you can anchor into and go to. If you are moving through something really like dense and heavy, you could go every couple of weeks,
I could see
but we
that,
just wouldn't
yeah.
want to do that ongoing because as you can feel, it's a lot for your nervous system. And we
Yeah,
want to give your body and your mind time to integrate. But if I'm going through something rough, like I'll do a couple like virtual sessions, like every couple
yeah,
of days to really start moving through things. And then I'm like, okay, I feel like I shifted enough. Like I'll be good till my next monthly session. Because again, I do this monthly as a participant. That's how much I believe in this work and that's how much it positively impacts my life. I'm like anytime, the practitioner I go to has a session on that month and I can go, I'm like I'm there.
I'm
I
there,
need to be
yeah.
there. It's so powerful. It really, and I do all the things too and I still love going.
Yeah, that is so awesome. I love how passionate you are about it. It's great. Like, I could feel it coming through in your energy, like, how much you love this, live and breathe it, literally.
Well, and I think that no, literally. But I also like another reason why I love, participating, of course, for personal reasons, but it reminds me how powerful this work is. Because, if you were to, let's say, if I were to stop participating in this, it would just become another job, another thing that
Mhm,
I'm doing. But when I feel the shifts in my own being,
mhm,
how can I not keep sharing this with people?
mhm.
People need this or some way to express their emotions. We need it.
100%.
Yeah.
And it's just a way to connect with ourselves. Like, we were kind of just touching on this in multiple different ways, but it's so intuitive, where you were saying like you can feel into, okay, that felt like it was enough, or, oh, you know what, I'm going to go for a couple more because I'm really navigating through something heavy. Like, it really is there isn't one size fits all for a tool or how often in that particular tool. It's such your own personal journey of how often that tool calls to you, and which one you're feeling called towards.
And that's like a huge benefit of these practices is really connecting with yourself and knowing what's a yes, what's a no, whether it be how often do I need this session or is this friendship even aligned anymore?
Yeah.
You get so connected with yourself that your body starts to communicate in these like very subtle yet powerful ways where now you're in partnership with your
Yes.
body out in the world and that's what it means to be connected with your body because a lot of people say like well how do I connect? I don't even know if I'm connected and I was that way too. But these little subtle changes happen where now your body's like your GPS. You're
Yes.
either
You're learning the language
gravitated.
of your soul.
Yes. You're either gravitating towards an experience or a person or whatever, or it's like, ooh, something doesn't feel right. And your body starts to move away, literally.
Yeah.
Even with foods that you eat, you might pick something up and it's like, ooh, I don't know. Or it's like, ooh, yes.
Yep.
And that's what being connected to your body is. And that's what breath work and all these other practices, that's what we do. It reconnects you to your body so that you can actually work in partnership with
Yeah.
it.
This is resonating so much for me just with where I'm at right now, because I just was on vacation for a week and a half, and then I got sick, so I couldn't go and do yoga like I normally would, and then I wasn't doing it when I was on vacation, obviously, and I didn't really have alone time, which like is fine. I love going on vacation with my partner, but it was like this compounded time in which I didn't have the connection to myself and hearing the language of my soul for this ongoing period of time. And then in tandem with that, we had all of what was going on with Florida and the hurricanes and how bad that was going to be. So I was like glued to my phone and spending way more time on social media than I ever have, I think. Just like I was so compulsively attached to that situation. And
Yeah.
all of that together, I could just feel energetically how heavy and dense I was feeling and just disconnected from myself and my own voice. I was kind of coming out of being sick too, but I felt tired and I didn't the things that normally light me up weren't lighting me up. And then part of I was also on my cycle during this whole thing
Yeah.
too. So it was just a massive mix that I
A
was like,
lot.
I don't even know who I am. What is going on? What is my I couldn't even tell you my intuition, right? But I really felt the impacts of not being connected to my body that have after having done it for so long now you know the difference once you feel it and you're tapped in, you know when you're not tapped in. And I
Mhm.
knew very quickly that I was like, okay, as soon as I can, I need to get my body moving, I need to put the flipping phone down and
Yeah.
I need to like go back inwards because we're way too out here. And just after one day of going in and spending time connecting, doing yoga, I feel like an entirely different person. It makes all the difference in the world. And it's
Yes.
wild once you start doing it, you can tell the differences. You know yourself, you know that GPS, you know when it's on or when it is off
Hmm.
for sure. So cool. Okay, well, I want to talk about your journey with how you got into this work because we talked a little bit about it on our matcha date years ago when we met and connected. And I feel like it's going to resonate so much with people when you talk about your journey because you were once in the corporate world and you wasn't feeling aligned. And I'll let you tell the story, but I think a lot of people are going to resonate with it.
Yeah. So the story kind of has a couple of different elements to it, and they all were happening at the same time. But what really led me to breath work was a head injury that I sustained. And at the time, I was in the corporate space. So this is all kind of going on together. And I actually kind of think all of this kind of synchronized together the way that it
On
needed to.
purpose. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But really, my time in the corporate space and where it's led me and how breathwork has really enhanced my life and moved me from that area is as such. I was working there for probably 12 years in total, but at about the 9-year mark, this feels like a long time when I say 9 years, that's when things really started to change. I started to dabble in this type of work, breath work, because the injury and all this stuff. And I really started going internally into my world. And the more I started to reconnect with myself, which is what we're talking about here, the more the veil started to unlift. And the more I realized how much I really was suppressing so much of my creativity. That's a huge one. My creativity was like so shoved down there that I actually held a belief that I wasn't creative and that I could not do anything on my own. I could only help other people bring their dreams to fruition, but I could never do it on my own. I was suppressing my truth about wanting to be in a leadership position. I was suppressing my truth about like how I wanted to serve the community. I was working in a law firm that was run like a corporation. And so I was just in a space that was not in aligned with what I really wanted to do. My passion was health. My passion was wellness. My passion was really serving people on a deep, deep level, but I was just pushing it down because I was so scared. I had all these limiting beliefs that we talked about earlier that were dictating my behaviors. I had all these traumas, big T, little t, that were like, had all these stories attached to them. And so when I had this little injury of mine, and I was seeking to heal the injury because it really, really messed me up for quite some time, what unfolded from that was really unlocking my truth and stepping into my truth. And once we feel our truth, like I mentioned earlier, I had these experiences in a breathwork session where I felt my truth. Like I felt what I actually wanted to do with my life. And once I felt it, it's really hard to ignore it. It is very hard to ignore a felt sensation because it's a part of you. It's like wakening up your cells in your body. And it's like, you felt this, like, what are you going to do with this now?
It's like a Pandora's box. You can't put it back in the box once it comes out, and you're like, "Oh, well, that's my truth now."
Yeah, you really, really can't. And so when I made the transition, I honestly, like, wholeheartedly at that point knew, like, I had been doing so much work on myself up until that point, specifically around my worth and what I wanted to do with my life and how much I believed in myself as much as I believed in this other company and the things I was doing for them. Like, no, like, believe in yourself. And I had that embodied feeling of belief and worthiness. And quite honestly, I got certified in this work, and then everything changed so rapidly because I was finally able to apply every single thing. Similar to you, I was doing project management, I was doing community outreach, community building, content creation, all these things. And so now when I had my own beautiful business or creation to apply it to, plus the belief, because that's half the
Yep.
battle,
Oh,
it's
yes.
actually 90% of the
Yes.
battle.
Actually, yes, you are 100% correct.
Yes. It was like, we're going in on this. We're going in on this. And thank goodness I did, because not only has it enhanced my life, but I mean, I have had thousands of people come through my sessions. And if I wouldn't have said yes, who knows? Like, these people would have landed themselves in a session at some point, and
Right.
that's great. But the fact that I said yes, and now thousands of people's lives have changed because of my yes, and I say that humbly, that
Yeah.
is so profound. And my hope is that people follow their yes because of the impact they can make on their communities.
Yeah, it's almost like it becomes like not a personal thing. You're actually like doing a disservice to so many other people and their journeys by not following your own truth. So it's not even just about you. What
Yeah.
you're thinking, there are other people who are counting on you.
Yeah, people, there's like a quote out there that says, when people say, they're scared to share a video or they're scared to share their voice, it's like, that's actually really selfish because someone needs to
Yes.
hear what you have to say.
Yes, exactly.
And that's so true, because all of the videos that I have seen have all been little nuggets that had led me to where I was and still lead me to where I'm going. This conversation is going to resonate with someone and it's going to lead them to their next step. And so it's
Yeah.
actually quite selfish to not share your voice. And it doesn't have to be on this type of platform, it doesn't have to be on social media. It can simply be through an interaction or a conversation of wisdom that you choose to share with somebody.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So then you took the leap and you left, it sounds like.
Yeah, yes.
Oh my gosh. And then because you were following your truth, do you feel like it kind of unfolded pretty quickly because you were in alignment?
1000%. It unfolded. It's really interesting. If you like actually go back and look at it, it looks like overnight this whole thing like blew
Mm.
up. And but we what we know is that it's a whole life. It's
Yeah.
our whole life of
Yes.
lessons and learning and failures, because before this I had tried to launch a lot of different things on my own, but
Yeah.
there was that underlying belief that was never really there. And
Ooh.
so
Yeah.
when I actually had that embodied knowing of self-worth and belief in myself, and an aligned practice, an aligned business, so to speak,
Yeah.
that's when it all came together perfectly and then really started to flourish. And so I always kind of laugh because I'm like, yeah, it did kind of take off very fast, but also it was a lifelong journey of failures and no's that got me here as
Yeah, it sounds
well.
like there was, like, version 1, version 2. I'm
Yeah.
curious to know how it was different between those other ventures that you were kinda dabbling with and maybe trying to play with for it to take off, and how that was different from this and what made it different. Because I feel like a lot of people get stuck there where they're like, "Ugh, I'm trying, I'm putting the effort in." Like, how did that look different for you?
So everything that I had tried to do on my own was all in the health and wellness space. So I
Mm.
started my Instagram account probably, oh my gosh, I don't know, a long time ago, maybe 10 years ago. And I
So
was
while
just
you were
sharing.
still working in corporate.
Yes, absolutely. When I started to get like little hunches of like wanting to express myself in these various ways, like I took to social media because I could create like recipes and post pictures and write captions. And that was my way to express myself creatively. And so I started doing that. And then with, just my own personal health journey, I started becoming obsessed with health and wellness. And as I really dove into that, I wanted to be a gut health coach because I had cured my own like horrible constipation. I was on antibiotics. I had acne. I mean, I just had a lot of health things going on. And I was like, I want to help people overcome this. And so I tried to launch like different programs or like ebooks and things, back in like those days. And that was really popular. And like nothing really took off. But something I'm always really proud of myself is that I will see a project through. I
Mm-hmm.
will see it through and I will give it a shot. And if it doesn't work, I will pivot, but I always see the project
Yes.
through, unless now my internal GPS is like, actually, this
Hard
is
no.
super unaligned,
Yeah.
hard no. And then I ask myself the questions, is this fear or resistance coming up? Or is this an actual no? Now I
Yes.
have this knowledge to make informed decisions. But going back to those different things that I launched, I used to do local like wellness workshops in town, which actually were kind of fun. Like they always sold out, which was fun. But I was
Nice.
talking about like recipes and food and gut and things like that, but nothing ever stuck. Nothing
Mm.
really, really stuck. And so I kind of went back into the corporate space. I was still doing my Instagram page to express myself. And then when I found that deep rooted connection with the breath work and how powerful it was, went and got certified, doing it the Casey way, threw up a group session. I was like, whatever, like, we'll see what happens, see it through. I did. And then I just became obsessed with the creation of the experience, from getting the people into this space to
Mm.
creating to hosting the session to wrapping it up in a bow. Like I just love the whole process. And so doing that over and over and over again each month was actually quite easy for me because I
Yeah.
enjoyed it so much.
Okay, so net of what I'm hearing through your story is the difference between the two was internally and how it resonated. So it was like you were hovering around. You were like, I know it's going to be in the wellness space. I'm feeling called towards this area. Is it this? That kind of feels okay. This kind of feel, oh my gosh, this is the one. And
Yeah.
it just energetically felt different from you. And that's how it ended up coming what it became, because energetically it was different for you. So it wasn't any strategy necessarily that you did differently. It really was what came from within and was on your heart and aligned.
1000%. And I think adding to that, the core thing of the belief and the self worth. Like
Mm,
you deserve to do something that you love. Like
I
you
love that.
really, really do. Like you are worthy of this. You can do this. And it was that coupled with everything else being aligned, because I think that someone else could be in my position. Actually, I see it all the time with a lot of new practitioners. They're wonderful practitioners, but they can't get themselves to stay consistent with this stuff because a lot of the beliefs that are running are old programs and they haven't
Yeah.
gotten themselves out of those programs yet. And so I do think that that belief in self-worth was a major piece, in addition to feeling super aligned with what it was
Yeah. You
and
need
just
the
everything
two to
else.
come together for this like
Mhm.
kismet reaction.
1000%.
So what kind of, I mean, I'm sure breathwork was a part of it, but what else went into being able to change those beliefs in your journey to feel worthy?
Oh, yeah. So in between the corporate space and the breathwork transition, I had a very short job with a company called Momentum. And the people who launched this company were coaches for Tony Robbins, like
Mm,
executive coaches. One of them was like the director of coaching. And so they were looking for someone like a project manager to just help come in like operationally and help in this space, help them build their business. And so I got connected with them for about a year. And the things that I learned while being immersed, when they say you are what is it? The average of the 5 people you hang
yep.
out with, that
Yep.
could not be more true, because these people were, their minds, the way that they operated and the way that they spoke and the way that they thought, they were experts all in human psychology. And so I, being the observer that I am, is just watching, listening, and I'm picking up on this stuff. They're teaching me things. They're now having me lead some of their coaching calls. And I just started to really internally change.
Mhm.
really, really, really change. And so at the end of that partnership, I mean, coupled with the breath work, coupled with everything that I was doing, I was just this newly invented person. Like I could
Mhm.
not even believe who I was a year before that. And that's how much things can change
Yes.
in a year when you get around people who are doing the things, not even that you want to do, but just how you want to behave.
Yes.
How are they responding to things? Are they complaining or are they finding solutions? Are they thinking compassionately or are they Debbie Downers? Like how
Mhm.
take inventory right now of the people in your life, the 5 people, and how are they operating, and do you feel inspired by how they're operating? And if they are not, get your butt to one of our sessions, mine, yours,
Yes.
or the hundreds others that are here, because that's where you're going to meet really amazing
Yeah.
people who are in alignment with who you want to become. And so I think that was a major piece, coupled with all of the breath work and embodiment work I was doing. And it was just like, whoosh, here we go.
I love that so much because I feel like so I teach this to clients all the time when we're trying to figure out how do I manifest this thing that I want? Well, there's different facets that go with it, and I love that in your story and in this episode we've touched on like the two really big ones, and one of them that we just hit on now is the expanders. It's finding the people who are going to help you see to believe what you want is possible and get your mind thinking in a new way. Like you didn't have that framework of thinking, but when you went and took this job, it expanded your mind to be like, oh whoa, I never would have arrived here if I didn't watch somebody do this and then realize that I could just as
Mm-hmm.
easily do this myself. Like, boom, that never would have happened on its own. So you have to put yourself in rooms with people who can expand you to think differently. So that's one piece of it. And then the other half, which we were talking about, with like breath work and going in and reprocessing the big T and little t trauma, whatever's getting stuck, the unblocking and unlocking to rewire your brain. And when you put those two pieces together, oh my gosh, that is when the magic happens. So it's a little bit more than just writing down, what you want, the 369 method, or creating a vision board. Those are important for like your North Star and knowing where your intuition is guiding you. But to really like make those big changes, it's the expanders, and it is going within and doing the work. So I
Yeah.
love that we've like rounded out on like all the things that I teach. I'm like, yes, you're proving my point, Casey. Thank you.
Going. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so so cool. So I know you have so many different events and things going on. Where can everyone find you? How can they take a breathwork class and learn from you and do all the things? You do so many awesome things.
Yes. Well, all of my events, I host local monthly events here in Phoenix and the Scottsdale area. And you can find all of those events at breathewithcasey.com or at my Instagram at healthfulcasey. But, I'm always sprinkling different events. We have a daytime retreat coming up in probably February or March. A retreat coming up at the end of next year. We just had it in October. So it'll be in October of next year with my dear friend Melanie, I was telling you about.
Fun.
There's always things going on, but with that being said, there's always things going on. So when you feel called to come see me and come join one of these experiences, there will always be something for you to attend.
I love that. So cool. Okay, so net, we just need to have everyone go follow you. So I'll link everything in the show notes to make it easy for everyone. And this episode I think is going to be so powerful for so many people. So I'm so glad to have you be the first guest on the podcast. I think that this is going to help so many people. So thank you for being here. So so glad you were here. And for those of you listening, please like and subscribe. Let us know what you thought of the podcast in the comments, and you can follow along for more on Instagram. It's at dearhigherself.podcast, and we've got new episodes every other week. So subscribe and follow along so you don't miss an episode, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for listening.